I was faced with a choice which I never should have had.
She was crying like I had never heard a woman cry before in my life.
And I just cried for weeks and weeks. Everything reminded me of a baby.
And I kept trying to get up from the table and look to see what was in that jar.
I was dealing with the loss of my unborn child and I didn't even know it.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Whisper, be silent no more.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and today we're going to be watching the second part of the documentary Life After Abortion. Today you're going to be hearing about the consequences of abortion, real-life testimonies of women who have been hurt from abortion. Now let's watch Life After Abortion.
When I walked out of that clinic and I walked down Santa Monica Boulevard, I knew I was a different person. I felt like there was something evil inside of me. I felt like I could do anything and there were really no boundaries anymore. I felt murderous. I felt unloving and uncompassionate.
I didn't realize that after I would have these complications and that I'd really be struggling emotionally. They didn't tell me any of that. I wish somebody had.
I began wearing a mask to hide the shame and guilt of what I had done. I began partying in nightclubs and drinking to the point of falling down drunk. I used illegal drugs, anything I could use to numb the pain that I was in.
So I went back to school, pretended like it didn't happen, but I started drinking and smoking some pot and trying to get rid of the pain that was just so deep.
I became very promiscuous. I started drinking more, taking drugs.
I immediately started to drink, use drugs.
I began to just live in the bars, drink heavily, do drugs, became very sexually active.
I started drinking, I started doing drugs, and I became very promiscuous.
In the year before starting to medical school, I worked at an abortion clinic doing physical examinations and also family planning for the women who came there. My thought process was that I would instruct them on using birth control and would prevent the need for abortion in the future. What I found actually was that women were returning for repeat abortions. And my question was, had I not given them the proper instructions? Had I left something out of the instructions completely? It never occurred to me that it was not the instructions in family planning, but it was the behavior and repeat behavior that was causing the problem.
Over the next 4 years, I had 3 more abortions with acquaintances and guys from work. They weren't even serious relationships. I began to use abortion as a form of birth control.
I went through bouts of deep depression. Guilt haunted me. Shame followed me.
I began suffering from depression and panic attacks for which I had to take medication. I'd never had to take medications for anything like that before.
After my abortion, I was really depressed, and I sought help from some psychiatrists, and I got on antidepressants. The thing about it is I could tell them everything bad about me and everything I thought was wrong about the sexual abuse and other things, but I could not tell them about the abortion.
And I was drowning in this party atmosphere just to numb myself from the pain that I was feeling that I had taken the life of my own baby.
I knew deep inside of me that what I had done was take the life of my own child.
I felt empty and I would cry and I couldn't understand my feelings. This was my right to do this. All the feminists said is my body, my right. This was going to help me. Why didn't I feel that way?
As time went on, my heart got more and more empty, and I tried more and more things to try to fill it up. More drugs, more work, more accomplishments, another degree in school, increasingly dysfunctional relationships.
They said my life would get back to normal again. It's never been back to normal again.
The grief and trauma and shame that we as women deal with this choice, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
After my abortion, there were around 4 years that I tried to get on with my life, and that looked like overeating and undereating, drinking, promiscuity. I had nightmares. I became depressed. I felt anxious and shamed.
I can remember not being able to look at commercials about babies without crying. If we went to the mall and I saw a little baby, I would start crying. I remember feeling very guilty about not having my babies.
Every year, on that anniversary date of my abortion, I would go into a depression for about a 3-week period. Every time I heard the word abortion, I would break down in tears and just cry.
I just felt shame, I felt guilt. I would grieve, and I grieved for my 2 children that I wanted so desperately, and I know I could never have. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to see what they would have looked like, hear their voices. And I never gave them the chance to live. And I lived with this every single day.
I was haunted by reoccurring nightmares. And all I could see was mutilated babies' bodies. And I'd see mountains of them.
I have nightmares where I would save myself and let my first child just plunge to a raging river where I would save myself and let her die. And I remember her words, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy," until she was no more.
For 13 years, I tried to deny it. I tried to forget it. I tried to walk away from that horrible memory. But I couldn't. It followed me all the way through my life. It affected every area of my life. It affected me as a woman, as a mother, as a wife.
I was so numb inside and full of self-loathing, just deeply depressed, and it finally just got to a point where I no longer wanted to live. I felt I could no longer go on.
And there was times that I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't leave her alone because she was so scared. There was one night in particular, in the middle of the night, she woke up and she was just crying. And I looked in her face and I just saw terror. I just saw total agony in her face.
I began to have suicidal thoughts, and I made a suicide attempt.
I remember pouring a whole bottle of Valium in my hand and a whole bottle of Librium in my hand, and I don't know how many aspirin I poured in my hand because I just felt like everything was just completely out of control, and I can remember taking them all.
I was listening to depressing music. I was in a pit and I could not get out. I even tried to kill myself. I turned the gas on in the oven, and thank God a friend came to the door. I tried 2 other times to kill myself as well. My life was out of control.
My alcohol abuse was really strong, and then I would turn to cocaine so that I could feel something again, and then I would try to come down by drinking alcohol, and then I would want to feel something again, so I'd do some more cocaine, and it was such a vicious, vicious cycle, and it had a hold of my life, and I couldn't do anything about it. In fact, one night, I looked into my bathroom mirror and I stared straight into my own pupils, and I saw a force in my pupils that had a hold of me that was stronger than me, a force so strong that I couldn't get away. So one night I got as high as I could, and I got in my bathtub and I ran the water, and I got my bottle of Jack Daniels, and I got my crack pipe, and I got as high as I could, as much as I could afford, and I was up to about $1,000 a day at that time in my cocaine habit. And I laid down and I slit my wrist, and I watched the blood start to flow out of my wrist and into the water and turn the water red. And I slowly just faded away.
These feminist groups do not care about women. They care about abortion. And We need to start talking about this. We need to start asking all our pro-abortion friends, family members, colleagues, politicians, why do women need abortion? Don't you understand all the trauma that we suffer because of this? All the depression, the suicide attempts, the alcohol and drug abuse, the infertility, and even the death. Women are dying from their so-called legal right to choose.
The caller ID said it was Laura calling. We were always so happy to hear from her. She was such a joy. When I answered the phone, though I didn't hear Laura's voice, I heard screaming and crying. I could make out 4 words: Laura, not breathing, emergency room, and abortion. I immediately called the hospital and I finally got the doctor in the ER to talk to me. He was telling me everything they did for Laura, how hard they worked on her. And I kept praying the whole time, God, give her a chance. Then the doctor got to the end of the sentence and he said 2 words that hit me like thunder. He said, she's gone. The oxygen was sucked out of my room when he said those words. We got there at 2 o'clock in the morning. Laura was brought down to the morgue. I have not led a sheltered life, but nothing prepared me for this. To see my beautiful daughter wheeled out on a gurney in a body bag. He unzipped the body bag and inside was laying my beautiful daughter, with all the tubes still attached to her.
I'm a nurse, and I've worked in the intensive care unit. And a few years back, a young girl came to our hospital with her boyfriend, she had just had an abortion 2 days prior, and she was bleeding very badly with a fever. She was taken to surgery immediately and ended up with a hysterectomy. She also was brought into our intensive care unit after her surgery, and eventually she passed away. As the parents came to the hospital, I watched a father lay across his his daughter's bed, weeping that he would never hear her voice or talk to his daughter again.
The sad thing is the girl grows up front, pays her money, and then because the abortionist has to have a specimen in order to collect his commission, he probably scrapes out more of the lining of the uterus of a young woman that's not pregnant. We'll never know how many abortions are done on women every day across this nation that are not pregnant. But one is too many.
I got married at 20 years old, and shortly after that, decided to have children. And as time went on, was not able to conceive. As I went to a doctor to find out why, I was then told, because of all the scar tissue that was in my uterus because of my choice of abortion, that I possibly would never be able to conceive a child. I ended up having 12 surgeries, laparoscopies, DNCs.
The doctor told me that because of all of that scarring in my uterus from the abortions, that I had been left infertile and that most likely I would not become pregnant again.
I was 16 when I had my abortion. I'm 48 now, and I'm still coming to terms with the fact that I'm never going to have children the normal way.
I lay on the table and started thinking, how am I going to tell my husband that I'm not going to be able to have children with him? It was the reality of knowing that the only 3 children I would ever bear, I killed.
There's not enough tissue in my office to handle the tears of the women when they realize that they may have killed the only baby that they will have. The regret, the remorse is significant. I may be the only person that they have ever told that they had an abortion. Their husbands are not even aware of their past.
Around 5 years after my abortion, I got married and we started trying right away to have a baby. My longing for a child to replace the one that I aborted was very strong, and I was very excited to find out I was pregnant. When I was around 10 weeks along, I started bleeding, and I was told that my baby's heart had stopped beating and I had a miscarriage. I was told I would pass a plum-sized clot, and that is not what happened. I went into labor in a restaurant. I passed out trying to get my Tylenol with codeine, and I went home to my apartment with my husband, and I delivered that baby into my hand. I remember looking at this child in my hand and seeing tiny fingers and toes and arm and leg and a precious face and a tiny little rump. And I remember screaming, "My baby, my baby, my baby." And I realized that I had killed one as precious as this.
When I decided to have this abortion, my son was 6 months old. And I can remember after coming home from the abortion clinic, my son was crying and I was in so much pain I couldn't hold him. And I know that even that day that something in our relationship changed. I couldn't comfort him, I couldn't love on him like a normal mother any longer.
There was a gap between my third child and my fourth child. They were 4 years apart, and the child I aborted would have been right in between there. So as my youngest was growing up, I would always be reminded that I had another child that could have lived if I would have had the courage and not believed the lies that I believed. That's been very difficult to live with.
It was the month of January. My mother sensed how depressed I was. She remembered that this would be the month that the babies would be born, and she said, "You know, this is when you would have had the twins. And you're depressed because your body is longing to hold a baby that you can't have. Your body knows that you were pregnant and you're supposed to be a mother, and that's why you're so depressed, because you're longing to hold a baby."
I will never lose the regret or the grief over not being able to hold the baby.
In counseling women, I found that many of them did not understand that their circumstances and their situations would change, and they would be able to choose other decisions in the future. But if they chose to end that baby's life at this time, that baby would never have another opportunity to live. In other words, they had elevated their situation and circumstances above the life of that child.
In every one of those abortions, what I was doing was weighing a human life against the circumstances. And I was always counting those circumstances as being more important than this human life.
When I got pregnant the first time and I chose abortion, I was thinking of me. I was thinking about how my life and my college degree and my journalism major and all those things that were important were forefront. I never took into consideration that those choices, that abortion, would have lasting effects on my family, that my son would be missing siblings. It never crossed my mind.
I knew that I had to tell my parents that they had grandchildren they were never going to hold. I had to tell my brother and my sisters that they had nieces and nephews they were never going to meet. I started wondering who they'd be and realized I changed my family tree. There was going to be Christmases and holidays that there were going to be people missing. And then I started wondering about the grandchildren that I was going to be missing as well.
I thought many times, well, I won't be able to be at my little girl's first birthday party. I won't be having those father-daughter talks. I won't be able to take her to school the first day or walk down the football field at homecoming. I'm going to miss those occasions.
It's been 26 years since my abortion, and I still have moments of grief. You know, when you're pregnant, you carry a child for 9 months. When you've had an abortion, you carry them forever.
The hardest part of that was seeing those ultrasounds. When he was 8 weeks in the womb, which was the time that I terminated my first child, I got to see that. I got to see what I did. And although those ultrasounds were wonderful to look at, they were extremely bittersweet because they brought to my attention the life that I had taken. The heart was beating. He was sucking his thumb, pushing his hand against my belly, and all I kept thinking about was what I had done to his older sibling.
Well, when I saw the ultrasound, I saw a baby, and this baby was younger than the child that I had aborted, and I saw the body parts. I didn't see the ultrasound before my abortion.
We asked the moms after they've had the ultrasound how they felt prior to the ultrasound, whether they're abortion-minded or not, and now that they've seen their baby, how they feel. And I'd say 95% of them change their minds and choose life for their babies.
I never, ever would have had an abortion if I could have seen the ultrasound.
When we do ultrasounds on gals that are 6 weeks or less, it's amazing that we can even see the heartbeat at that early stage of development.
They almost immediately ask for their boyfriends to come in, and they look at the monitor and can't believe that there's a heart beating at 6 weeks.
This is 4 models that we bring to our classrooms, and these are size 7 weeks to 10 weeks gestation.
As a sonographer, I have the wonderful opportunity to see the babies in the womb, to see that little heartbeat at just 4 weeks following conception, to see the little baby moving at just 7 weeks. Hi, Charlotte. My name is Sherry, and I'm going to be doing your ultrasound today.
Great.
How you doing? To introduce these babies to the parents for the first time, it's incredible, and I always believed that if wombs had windows and the world could see what I see every day, there would not be an abortion issue. We're going to be able to measure and tell exactly how far along, and this is the most accurate time to determine when your due date is, because the baby's little yet. When a woman is considering abortion and she can see through the ultrasound her baby, when she can see that little heartbeat, and when she can get the love and support that she needs to carry that baby, 90% do not choose to abort. Look at him move. Look at his arms move. The heart. Look at his face. Look at his mouth open for you. See that? Look at that. Oh, this is so cool. I love this little age. Look at those little feet. And those arms wave. Next week, this baby's going to be moving and jumping all over the place. Let me take another.
Had I been shown that ultrasound, had I been shown that 12-week fetal model, I would have never had an abortion. I would have understood that my baby growing inside of me was already a living baby. I would have never taken the life of my child.
And then the horror of what I had done to my 2 babies hit me. And I thought, that woman so many years ago lied to me. That is not a clump of cells. That is life.
In the late 80s, transvaginal ultrasound was introduced using the high frequency that allowed us to have superb resolution and seeing the baby at 1 inch with fingers and toes. And this little baby's gonna grow so fast. And this one is 20 weeks. I know, isn't it amazing? But look at the baby looks the same. Everything is present. It's just gonna need just to grow bigger and get more fat on it. And then as we continue to grow in our technology and information, we have now 3-dimensional ultrasound and 4-dimensional, which adds the movement to the 3-dimensional. And now we can see the baby exactly what it looks like. We're doing surgery in the womb now and treating the baby as a separate patient. It's amazing the information that we have learned through ultrasound.
Since 1973, when abortion became legal through Roe v. Wade, every child born since then is an abortion survivor.
High school students and college students are the highest targeted age group for abortion.
And they need to know that there's healing and recovery. They need to know that they are worth something and that every child is worth something.
Since my abortion, I've often thought about all the things that I wasn't told and that I was told, and how they left out the truth about what abortion does to a woman and to a baby. I've gotten angry about that, and I've wondered, if they don't tell you what's going to happen, how is that a choice?
Wouldn't it be better to help a woman in an unintended pregnancy with support and real resources so she can really keep her baby than convince her that it's okay to have her unborn baby sucked from her womb and thrown in the trash? Wouldn't it be more compassionate to help her?
I would just encourage any woman that found themselves in the same situation that they would really think twice about it, and that they wouldn't let fear lead them to make a decision that they would regret the rest of their life.
You don't want to live a life of regrets, wondering what your child looked like, wishing you could hear their laughter, because one day you will experience that if you choose to give your child life.
There's life and joy for everyone in America, and that should be from fertilization to natural death. And so I invite you today and always, it's very important to just choose life.
Many women have had abortions, and there's no place for them to go, to have the voice, to say it. I think there's a lot of women in hiding because of still the shame of admitting it and its impact in their life. So what I would want to say is, take courage and do so for yourself and for the memory of that child.
Another very heart-wrenching story of life after abortion, on the consequences of abortion. And Cindy and I realized that sometimes you may be watching this and not realize what you've been experiencing is a consequence to maybe your abortion. And we want to let you know that you're not alone in your hurt or your pain. We do have a helpline number that you can call, but we'd also like to pray for you. And if you've been hurting from abortion, you can identify with these testimonies, and you have no one, you have the Lord Jesus Christ. So let's just pray real quick. Father God, I ask that you would send the great comforter to those who are hurting, and let them know that there's hope and healing and forgiveness through Jesus Christ. We ask, Lord, that you bring hope and restoration to the world. Amen.
Thank you for watching Faces of Abortion, a production of Operation Outcry. If you would like to make comments about our program or find out how you can get involved, please call 1-866-4OUTCRY or visit our website, operationoutcry.org. We want to hear from you.
Whisper beside